welcome you all to the Raymore City Council regular meeting for Monday, November the 26th. Could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Circo.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Kellogg.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend absent. Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item is our presentations and awards. Tonight, Harriet Lawrence will be addressing the council. She's the chairwoman for the Raymore Arts Commission. Ms. Lawrence, please step forward.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thank you so much for having me this evening, especially since I noticed that your packet is 186 pages long for tonight, so I'll make this brief. Thank you also for making the space available here in the chambers and down in Centerview for exhibit space for art. Currently, we have exhibits of student art. On the back, you will see some of the winners of the student art contest that was sponsored by the Tri-County Arts League and co-sponsored by the Arts Commission. And these are some of the winners of the mostly elementary school entries into that contest. The other works on the side walls and down at Centerview are a montage of student work from the middle school, the students of Chris Palmer, the teacher there. These works were suggested by a famous abstract artist of the early 20th century, and his work was called Circles in a Square. And you'll see that the kids have sort of copied that. As a matter of fact, I looked that work up. I think they did a lot better than he did. The credit for this show goes almost entirely to Sharon Paris, a commissioner, and also a member of the Tri-County Arts League. And she put it all together and made a very nice showing down at Centerview a couple of weeks ago. But I think credit also goes to the teachers who encourage all the students who do this artwork. I ran across a quote recently, which I think captures it entirely. That said that teachers are the civic soldiers on the front lines of democracy. And I think we need to give them as much credit as we possibly can. In addition, the commission is undertaking a little online survey in January that's sort of a follow-up to the community conversation and also a follow-up to the survey that we did 3 years ago to sort of find out what the citizens want in the way of art in the community. We have plans underway for all of next year's Family Art Days. We have a Christmas tree going up on Friday at TB Hanna. We're making progress on what we hope will be a really wonderful mural at Recreation Park. We're reviving the banners around the municipal circle and hope to extend them onto 58 Highway real soon. The other exciting part is that we are, for the first time, exploring the possibility of doing performance art because we now have the two fine venues of Centerview and the new amphitheater, which we'll have real soon. Much of what we do is in cooperation with Parks and Recreation, and we really appreciate their willingness to work with us and their expertise that they give us. Last but not least, we have to show our respect and appreciation to the people who really do the heavy lifting for the Arts Commission, Mike Eakey and Melissa McGee. I never want to leave them out because they're the ones that make it all possible. So thank you all for your little bit of time this evening. And if you have any questions.
Yep, anyone? Thank you, Harriet, and thank you for the explanation of the artwork. I appreciate that.
Okay,
yeah,
you're welcome.
I'll have to get over to Centerview and see what's over there as well.
It's very striking there. Okay. A lot more of them. Yes.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have no personal appearances, so we'll move on to staff reports.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Krass to make a staff report for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You have my written report that summarizes the activities of the Engineering and Operations and Maintenance Division for the month. Did want to update you on the snowstorm we've been dealing with for the last few days. The crews did wrap up operations this evening. All roads have been either serviced and treated with de-icing materials. The temperatures are expected to drop to the point where our de-icing materials lose effectiveness. We do anticipate some slick spots in the morning. We ask people to be cautious. We do have a crew on board overnight to monitor the road conditions, and we'll deal with things accordingly. We were able to take advantage of a small window of warmer temperatures this afternoon and clear quite a bit of ice off our major thoroughfares. We just need a little help from Mother Nature over the next couple of days to clear the rest of the roads. That concludes my staff report.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone? Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Krass, I noticed as driving by the permeable pavers intersections that it looks like they're doing a good job. When we had that melt today, looks like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, because I did notice some areas where we don't have them, and I noticed the water was pooling up in those areas. So I assume that's something you're keeping track of as well.
Thank you. Mr. Holman.
Mr. Krass, I think your crew, again, this year's done an excellent job and is outdoing, from what I can tell, all of the surrounding communities around. As I drive around, I certainly see a difference within our city. I think we go a step above. The widening of 155th, I know that we originally projected that to be done in early December, but we have had some very unusual 3 now measurable snowfalls in November. I was wondering if that was going to push that timeline back.
Well, that is a matter of discussion between myself and my assistant director for engineering. He's much more optimistic than I am. He feels we need just a few good days to finish it up. Looking at the snow out there, I'm not so sure, but the contractor is ready to take advantage of any breaks in the weather that they have to continue working.
Outstanding, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to acknowledge the city did a great job. I drove around. I've seen all the neighborhoods. I mean, they did it for what they had to deal with. A storm like this that came in so quick and wasn't predicted to do that much down south. They got it out. They got the roads cleared on a heavy night. It was cold, and icing, I know, wasn't working well, that de-icer, but they did a magnificent job everywhere I checked in the city. I mean, again, thank you for your crew. They're just phenomenal.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Krass, question for you. This is the largest snow event that we've had since I've been on council, so I've never had this opportunity. At what point do we ask our citizens to try to get their vehicles off the streets so we can plow effectively? Every place that I drove around and looked at this evening was where cars were snowed in, where they had not put them in their empty driveways.
Normally, we start looking at that if it's expected we are going to get a snowfall of this event. We have talked about working, after every event we kind of get together and discuss things. We are exploring just doing that on a routine basis, just asking folks to park on one side of the street and give the guys some, but it's something we're just kicking around at this point in time.
Thank you.
Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to say kudos to Mr. Krass and his crew also. Very well done and very much acknowledged and noticed, not only by us up here, but by people who traverse through our city. I heard about that today again at work. I always do, but I definitely will bring that up again. I got a text message last night, excuse me, asking exactly what Mr. Burke has just talked about. Family member asked if they should leave their cars parked out in the street. And I just started laughing. I says, you got a driveway big enough, put them in your driveway. So anyway, they did. And then that led to more questions because their street hadn't been plowed. And I sent them verbatim exactly what we all got from our city manager as to what the crews were doing and what to expect. And I sent her a link to the different, and this goes out to everybody who's listening. There is information on the website about snow removal, the different wards, I guess, that they're broken up into for the snow crews to attack the storm. And I remembered that we have a system in our website that our trucks are tracked GPS so that when they finish a street that it shows up green and that. I just want to say this because I was able to find that myself, but I've been up here on this dais now for almost 10 years. I've learned how to navigate somewhat through it, but I do want to say that my family members was not as easily able to find that as I was. I guess one thing that I would ask or suggest is in the spirit of continual improvement that geo option that we have during these times somehow or another to think about making these more prominent so the people can find those just as easily as they can to pay their water bill. You know, like I say, my niece, I'm sorry, my family member was not able to find that, but I was, and I was able to send that to her in a text message. But it just kind of speaks to the issue that, you know, this family member wasn't able to go to it and just boom, find it. So that is no criticism. I'm just saying that I see an opportunity for continual improvement, and that's my suggestion. And again, thank you so much to the staff for everything that they've done through this, and it is greatly appreciated, not only by this community, by other people who traverse through our community to get to work.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Krass. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a report for Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, sir, Mayor, members of the council. I submitted a written staff report, but I want to highlight a couple things. First of all, Mr. Mayor, your tree is on its way. Will be set up tomorrow in time for the tree lighting event this Friday night. We have 15 community partners participating in the Christmas tree trail. So those will all be lit up on Friday night as well. So we're looking forward to that event. The details for the event's in the back of my written report, but activities begin, let's see, make sure I say it right, at 6 o'clock at TB Hanna Station. So that's for this Friday night. Since I spoke with you last, we have stocked Johnston Lake at Hawk Ridge Park with over 800 trout. That has been an extremely popular program, and we're getting all kinds of pictures on Facebook of folks catching the fish and stuff like that, so we're pleased to do that. On November 16th, we hosted the Santa softball tournament. We had 18 teams, and if you remember that day, it was bitterly cold on that 16th, but they came out and they were all dressed up, looked like Christmas and Halloween all mixed together, but we had 18 teams out there. They raised over $6,000 to buy toys for kids for Christmas. So this is, they specifically chose Raymore and Recreation Park to host this tournament. This is the second year, and it just keeps getting bigger. We're already talking about a 2-day event. And that is kind of the close of our outdoor season. So we immediately close the restrooms. They are shut down and winterized for the winter after that. Just a quick reminder, this week's Centerview, I know Harriet talked about the art at Centerview, but this particular week we have Centerview closed. We're doing some warranty work for this week. So Parks and Rec operations are hosted out of the RAC, which we're very fortunate now to have 2 facilities to be able to do that. And while we're over there, my staff is taking advantage of that time, and we're moving things out of the park house into the RAC. So we're preparing for the CIP project of demolishing the park house. So we're kind of over there. Centerview is closed. There's signs on the doors. All the phone calls are forwarded to the RAC. So we're just asking everybody to come down there. But next week you'll be able to come back in and hope to show off some stuff that we're taking care of this week. And finally, just wanted to highlight some stuff from the park board. We have our November meeting tomorrow night. Got 3 topics on the agenda, which is our bridge replacement for Recreation Park, the bridge that connects Rec Park and Moon Valley. They'll be making a recommendation to the council for that. And we also are talking about a grant writing services, specifically to help out with our Hawks Nest Playground at Hawk Ridge Park. And they're going to make some amendments to their bylaws. And just as a reminder for the council and for the park board, unless things change right now, we are scheduled to have a joint work session together on December 17th. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone? Ms. Abdelgawad.
First, I just want to say, wow, this Your report's very thorough, and you guys are busy. You can see it. Just a quick question as far about the timing. I know people will probably be asking me that walk from our neighborhood over to the park, the timing on that bridge. Any ideas when that work will start and finish?
Official recommendation of the park board's tomorrow night, then it goes through 2 reads of the council, so that will at least take us into January, and then we'll begin contracts signing, mobilization. So it'll be a spring project. I would say, Mike, I would say March at the earliest, I would think.
Mr. Holman.
Good to hear about the trout stocking being popular. I really wasn't surprised. We've known that that's been popular since we instituted it. And if I recall, we do that in 2 stages now. We stock, like we did a couple weeks ago, early November, and then when is the restocking? February, because that's, we'll see the wane as more of the fish get caught, and then the uptick in February if it's seasonable and people can get out there to get it a second time. Okay, that's all I needed. Thanks.
You, sir. Anyone else? Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.
Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Mustine. I would ask Mr. Icky, to my right, to make staff report.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. While Mr. Crass and his folks were braving the elements for the last 3 days, the communications department was warm inside, making snow puns and jokes and posting them to our Facebook page. With an event like the snow event, it's always a great time, especially for the communications department, to remind folks of the different assets and pieces of information that we have available on our website, through our Facebook page, and other online tools, to remind them that we have the the tracking portion of our website. Anyone can go to raymore.com/snow. We make it real easy. And also during snow events, we include the link on the top banner of the homepage, so that, again, it's easy to find, that anyone can get to that snow map and track along with any event. This event was particularly vexing in a couple of reasons, because it came on so quickly. For the communications department, especially when it comes to severe weather, our goal is always to engage folks early, that we can put out information ahead of time, that we're able to make sure that they know the storm is coming through our emergency management pages, as well as the police department pages and the city pages. But then also during the event, whether it's a tornado, severe rain, or like we had the snow, allows folks to stay engaged during the event, that we can answer questions, we can direct people to the proper resources. And then finally, after the event, it allows us the opportunity to shine a spotlight on the people who responded during the event. And particularly in this event, it was noticeable the number of people saying thank you for the work done by the Public Works Department. Even some of our more vocal critics online were very complimentary of the work being done, and even pointing out, in comparison to other cities or agencies, how well Public Works was able to respond to a storm, especially as quickly as it came on. And so at your place tonight, you have a few of just kind of the samples posts that we had, that myself and Melissa McGee were able to post during this event. And so would be happy to answer any questions or anything from the communications department.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone? Mr. Holman.
Just a comment, Mr. Icky. I'm not on Facebook, but I will give you the literal thumbs up on this one. This is great.
Anyone else? Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I saw your post on tracking the snow plows and forgot about that option. So it was something, I'd kind of forgot. We just haven't had any events in such a long time. So that was kind of nice. I could see that my road was not plowed, but I could see that the connector was. So if I needed to get out, I knew I could just traverse just, a couple hundred yards, and I'd be on a good road. I was kind of expecting that you would get out in the snow and maybe do some live streaming like you've done before, and I didn't see any of that. So just a suggestion next time, since when you're nice and warm inside, you could go out and do that, just to show us that it is a bad weather event, like we don't know that's going on. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Icky. Next week's work session of the council on December 3rd. There are currently 4 items on the agenda. It will be a joint meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. We will take advantage of that joint meeting to have the quarterly report given from the Economic Development Department. We will also be updating the City Council on the current status of the firing range and the budgeted amount for the firing range, and making some recommendations on proceeding forward with those funds. We'll also be making a report out to the council on a recent communication that we received from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources as a concluding item. Relative to the weather, since we can't get enough talk about snow this evening, I was out in it. Mr. Murdoch was out in it throughout. I made some homemade cookies and delivered them up here to dispatch and out to Public Works, and just an incredible group of people, and not only looking out for the citizens of Raymore, but looking out for each other during those events. I, as always, cannot say enough about our staff. With that concludes staff. Oh, one more item. What am I talking about? Pleased to report that we have received, for the 6th year in a row, the Award of Financial Reporting Achievement for our financials, our CAFR, that the council receives. So we now have 14 years of the Budget Award and 6 years of the CAFR Award from the GFOA.
Excellent. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Congratulations to the Finance Department, especially on that one. That concludes staff reports this evening, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, Mr. Fearborn? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda tonight. I would entertain a motion to dispose of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, move that we approve the consent agenda to include the following items. A, City Council minutes, October 22nd, 2018. B, City Council special meetings minutes, November 13th, 2018. C, 2018 curb project acceptance and final payment.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion been seconded to accept or to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Yes, Ms. Abdel-Gawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just feel like I should share that even though I wasn't in attendance at the meeting on October 22nd, I was able to watch it online, so I feel comfortable voting on the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0, 1 absent. Thank you. And because Mr. Fearborn made us work on November the 13th, there is no unfinished business to address, talk about tonight. So everything's under new business tonight. So could I please have the first reading of Bill 3400 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3400 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from BP Business Park District to PUD Planned Unit Development District, a 136.38-acre tract of land located in the west half of Section 29 and part of the northeast quarter of Section 30 in Township 46 North, Range 32 West, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. This item requires a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Cataret to make staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. The applicant for this request, Grant Harrison with Band Trust Real Estate, the property owner, Good Otis LLC, have been working with staff over the last month since this request was last continued. Just a lot of details on this particular project, a lot involved with this request. So what we'd like to do as a group is request some additional time to finalize those details. Request that the public hearing and the application, the request before you this evening, be continued to your January 14th, 2019 meeting.
Okay. And since that is a recommendation of staff, we will keep the public hearing open at this time, but I would request a motion to dispose of this item until the January 14th meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we continue the public hearing and request to the January 14th, 2019 council meeting.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading, but continue this item. And we're not approving the first reading, are we? We're just continuing. That's the motion.
That is correct, sir.
To the January 14th meeting. Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Be carried over until the January 14th meeting. Next item, could I please have the reading of Resolution 1866? by
The
title
reading of
only?
Resolution 18-66 by title only. A resolution of the Raymore City Council approving the Raymore Industrial Development Preliminary Plan located in the west half of Section 29 and part of the northeast quarter of Section 30 in Township 46 North, Range 32 West, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. This item also requires a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
Thanks, sir. I'd ask Mr. Cataract to make a staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. So this is a companion request to the one you just continued, so we would like to request continuation of this public hearing and the request to your January 14th, 2019 meeting as well.
Thank you, sir. Hearing that, we'll leave the public hearing open, and I would entertain a motion for a similar motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we continue the public hearing and request to the January 14th, 2019 council meeting.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Okay, please have the first reading of Bill 3406 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3406 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri approving the relocation agreement for a Pizza Hut store to relocate into the 58 Highway West Extended Redevelopment TIF area.
Thank you. Is there a staff report, sir?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Sid Douglas, Special Economic Development Counsel for the city, to make staff report on this item.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. As you're aware, Pizza Hut has recently relocated one of its stores into the Raymore Galleria TIF area. And the TIF statutes allow that if they are considered a direct beneficiary of tax increment financing, that you're allowed to make a specific finding of that, and that allows their base sales to continue to be counted and distributed to all the city and other taxing districts. But we have to make that specific finding by ordinance. This ordinance makes that finding that they are a direct beneficiary by relocating within the TIF, and there will be agreement that we'll have with the developer that will have their acknowledgement of that because it will impact their TIF revenues they receive for reimbursement. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Mr. Burke.
Thank you. How will that affect next year's? Will they be like every other place within that TIF zone for the next fiscal year? Not this one, but the next one?
Yeah, their base sales will be going forward from the relocated operations. We'll use the base for calendar year 2017. And so everything that they use going forward that's in excess of the prior year's sales will be considered as the increment and to be captured. But anything else up until that point will continue to be distributed to the city and other taxing districts.
Anyone else? Thank you, Sid. Appreciate that. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3406.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3406, relocation agreement, Pizza Hut.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3406. Any further discussion? Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not familiar, I guess this is a question for staff. The new location, is it a sit-down restaurant or is it a delivery-only unit?
It's carry-out and delivery as well.
So nowhere to sit down?
I don't believe so.
I couldn't remember. Thanks.
Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Am I correct? This what we're voting on tonight only pertains to the TIF agreement as it applies to the area, just the taxing part of it. Am I correct?
What? And I really had to get this to me ducky horsey. So I'll try to explain this, and as Sid starts nodding no behind me,
okay,
bear with me. But as the council is aware, tax increment financing is we only get as a city the sales tax where it was valued when the business went in. And the same thing goes for Eats if it's a relocation like this. So what this is basically doing is on Pizza Hut only, It is establishing as the base where the city is collecting the sales tax what their sales were in 2017. Because they're coming in, if we didn't do this, everything that they were generating would be based on basically a $0 amount, and we would be turning over into the special allocation fund for the TIF for 50% of everything that they were making from $0, correct? Instead, what will happen is the base sales amount will be what they were making in the old location in 2017, the last full year that they were in operation. So they will only collect into the special allocation fund the increment sales tax, assuming that there's a growth in that sales. If there's no growth in the sales, then all of those sales will come to the city now, rather than going into the TIF allocation fund.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I don't want to muddy these waters, but I kind of dovetailing off of what the point that Mr. Burke brought up too is that, and this kind of explains it, this is only a pickup and a delivery type business at this point. It's no longer the sit-down type that it used to be at the old location. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm going to stop muddying the waters at that point, and I will ask staff later on my concerns at that point. But I'm willing to continue on with this.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Ullman.
They'd actually basically discontinued sit-down service at the old location for some time. You could go in and get your pizza and go sit down and eat it, but they didn't wait on you, and they had no soda. So they, in effect and operationally, for several months have not had a sit-down restaurant in there, and they do not in the new location. My wife and youngest son like Pizza Hut pizza, if you haven't figured that out.
Anyone else? We have a motion on the floor for approval of the first reading. All those in favor? We have 7 yes, none opposed. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3404 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3404 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri approving an agreement between the Mid-America Regional Council Solid Waste Management District and the City of Raymore, Missouri relating to the Regional Household Hazardous Waste Program.
Thank you. Is there a staff report, sir?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Krass to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. What you have before you this evening is our annual contract with the Mid-America Regional Council for their Household Hazardous Waste Program. It does allow the city to participate in a drop-off event every year, and also allows access to a recycling facility in, I believe, in Lee Summit and in Kansas City. We have been participating in this for quite some time, and staff does recommend approval of the contract.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Hearing none, is there a motion to dispose of this issue?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve Bill 3404, Mark Household Hazardous Waste Agreement.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3404. Any further discussion? Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When was the last time that we noticed an increase? This is based on per capita, and I see where it says $1.07 per capita based on the census. When was the last time we had an increase? Because it's been quite some time, and I think I remember way back, the very first time I voted on this was like $1 a person, so I'm just kind of curious.
I'm sorry. It would be the incremental increase is every single year based on the estimated census for that year. And as we compare to the other cities in the metropolitan area.
Okay.
Mark also does that with the 3 fees that we pay to Mark. Mm-hmm. So they use the exact same formula for all of their programs.
Good, thank you.
Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Could please have the first reading of Bill 3405 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3405 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the ETC Institute, Inc. for the development and administration of a citizen survey.
Thank you. Is there a staff report, Mr. Fearborn?
Thanks, sir. I would ask Mr. Icky to make the staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. Since 2006, the ETC Institute has managed the Direction Finder Citizen Survey. Survey has been critical in garnering feedback on many of the city's core functions and operations. As outlined in the attached contract, ETC will develop the survey, serve as an objective third party during the survey process, and will conduct the data analysis used by council and city staff. Ryan with ETC is here to help answer any questions you might have about this contract.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Mr. Holman?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Icky. Tonight, we're just voting on whether or not to award the contract. The follow-up process as we go forward of this is usually a work session where staff asks the council what they would like to see, what kind of trends you all are seeing, correct?
Correct. We'll be coming back to the council just shortly after the first of the year with sample questions, as well as any other additional. If you remember at the end of the survey, there are some open-ended questions that we kind of allow to change from year to year, and we'll be bringing that just after the first of the year. Timeline-wise, we're looking at having this in the mail and by the end, sometime in March, with it being back with results sometime in April.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If there are no other questions, there are a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3405.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3405, award a contract ETC Institute for the 2019 Citizen Survey.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3405. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3407 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3407 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Bushy Head LLC to provide annexation consultant services.
Thank you. Is there a staff report, sir?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Cataret to make a staff report on this item.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. A little over a year ago, at a work session, council discussed the future of annexation for the city of Raymore, and at that time, he directed staff to work with the mayor in contacting property owners along our eastern corridor of 58 Highway out to Missouri 291 Highway. So in the first 6 months of 2018, the mayor and a few members of staff were meeting with individual property owners about voluntary annexation. And at your August work session, we provided council with an update of the status of those discussions. And there were several interested individual property owners. I think we identified 6 specifically that definitely had an interest in voluntary annexation. But one of the requirements of state statute is that those properties seeking voluntary annexation must be, the properties must be contiguous and compact with the existing city boundary. We can't just skip along. There has to be a continual expansion, if you would, of the city boundaries, and we were lacking that based upon the results of our work with the property owners. So it's at the conclusion of that work session where you directed staff to proceed with the request for qualifications, looking to obtain some professional services to do an evaluation of different annexation scenarios. And in fact, one of the scenarios perhaps could be we don't do anything. It's not prudent for us to move forward on this. But the primary purpose, what we hope to gain out of the services, is for the city to receive an objective review of the economic costs, the fiscal benefits of annexation. That's going to help the community to inform us about future annexation discussions and decisions that need to be made. So staff reviewed the proposals that were submitted. We recommend that the city retain Bushy Head LLC to provide those annexation consultant services for a not to exceed amount of $64,000. Tonight, we are joined with 3 members of the team who we recommend for this work. They're Christine Bushyhead and Corey Henry of the Bushyhead Law Office, and then Daniel Miller, who is with Larkin. He would be the civil engineer assisting on some of the engineering aspects, when we start looking at the areas we need to serve, there, as far as city services, need to have that expert provide that information. So they're here this evening if you have any questions from them. But staff does recommend that council approve Bill 3407 this evening. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? I believe we've talked about this for quite some time. Everybody understands the process here and how we're moving forward. In fact, we budgeted the amount is in the budget for this particular contract. So if there's no further questions, I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve Bill 3407, award a contract to Bushyhead LLC for annexation consultant.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3407. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Okay, please have the first reading of Bill 3408 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3408 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Section 800, Compensation Administration of the current Raymore Administrative Policy Manual.
Thank you. Is there a staff report, sir?
Yes, sir. I would ask Chief Zimmerman to make staff report on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. The policy, the recommended policy amendment that you have before you tonight deals with compensation administration. What we found as we prepared for the beginning of the fiscal year on November 1 was an unintended consequence of the policy that was currently in existence. What you see in the memo that came before you recommending this change was that we had individuals, and one individual in particular that precipitated this at the start of the fiscal year was an individual being promoted into a new position, which would generate that probationary period as a result of that promotion, that would be on probation on November 1 and then would consequently not step through in the step chart. So that individual would have ended up making actually less money following the promotion than they would have made, if they had stayed in their current position and not been promoted. So as we took a look at this, we brought this to Mr. Fearborn and took a look at the individuals that might be impacted, through this unintended consequence of the policy, because the policy actually does address individuals stepping through in the step chart when they come off of a performance improvement plan, and being allowed to step through once they finish the probationary period from that performance improvement, but not for new hires and not for promotions. And so what this language does is it cleans up that unintended consequence, allows those individuals to step through as soon as that probation is finished and not have to wait until a new fiscal year starts. So when those individuals, as they and are staggered because they're hired at different times, they're promoted at different times throughout the year, when that promotion is, or that probation is completed, they are allowed then to step to the next step rather than wait until the start of the fiscal year. And what you have here as an attachment is that section of the policy, 800, section A, 4, and you see the strike through here. Just the removal of those few words will allow those individuals to step through when the probation is completed rather than wait. So that is the recommendation of staff, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions of the Chief? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Chief. Good report. A very small number of employees, obviously, that could be affected by this. It makes sense as a change. Is there anybody that, since we just passed our current fiscal year budget, is there anybody that will need to go back and fix retroactively with this?
Actually, no, sir. The individual that I mentioned that brought this to our attention, Mr. Fearborn has the latitude in the current policy to make those adjustments, and so that individual who was promoted from Public Works was allowed to step through on November 1. The others will come up in December and January and February. So
excellent.
No.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. Ms. Abdel-Gawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm trying to wrap my brain around this. Would this allow people to step forward even if they haven't been in their position for a year? Isn't the idea of the steps to move one step each year? So if I'm in my position for only a few months, but I cross that November 1st date, then I would essentially be moved up, like I've worked there in that job for a year when I really haven't.
What the unintended consequence of the policy was that individual that would potentially be hired, say in May, and would be still on probation or in that 6-month introductory period and would not be eligible in the current policy to step on November 1 when everyone else steps through, but rather is being made to wait until November 1 of the following year, which seems excessive to wait 15 or 16 months before you get that step. Now they're being forced to wait, but they only wait until their probation is up in order to move forward. So they're not moving ahead of anyone that they're in the same step with. They're just stepping once they're being basically recognized for the completion of the probation, whether it's being hired new or you know, a performance improvement plan or the promotion, as in the instance that brought this to our attention.
Anyone else? There are no other questions. Is there a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3408?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3408, Administrative Policy Revision, Section 800.1, Compensation Administration.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3408. Any further discussion? Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do a lot of thanking the staff, but as a person that's worked for different boards and things since the first job I ever had, except for delivering for Pizza Hut, the best thank you can give to a worker is an increase in salary at an appropriate time, like everyone else. So this is definitely the right move.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3403 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3403 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, calling for and establishing the date of the general municipal election to be held on April 2nd, 2019.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask City Clerk to make staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. In accordance with the City Charter, Section 9.1, this bill calls for the next municipal election to be held on April the 2nd, 2019. Positions for the mayor at-large 3-year term, as well as each council seat for a 2-year term, are open or will be open. Candidate filing begins December the 11th, continuing and ending on January 15th, 2019. That concludes staff reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? There are none. Is there a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3403?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3403, calling for April 2nd, 2019, regular municipal election.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3403. Any further discussion? Mr. Ullman.
Something that I don't think I've ever heard mentioned up here on the dais. We have recognized Jeannie for years for excellent service to the city, for her continuing education, and a number of other things. But I can tell you, going through this process for the first or second or third time, it is a blessing to have her there because she knows the ins and outs. She explains it to everybody. She walks you through like she's your mother, and I, for one, greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Jeannie.
Amen. Anyone else? Hearing none, is all in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3410 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3410 by title only, an ordinance reappointing Ross Nigro Jr. as municipal judge for the City of Raymore.
Thank you. Is there a staff report, sir?
Thank you, Your Honor. As the council is aware, Judge Nigro has indicated his desire to and willingness to continue to serve as the municipal court judge. Met with you all last week on November 19th to discuss issues that are within the court relative to the Missouri legislative and Supreme Court actions that continue to manifest themselves. Judge Nigro currently makes $15,514. That's the amount that he's been at for the last 2 years. In keeping with the City Council's past practice, it would be my recommendation that he receive a 2.5% increase for 2017 retro and 2018 retro 2.5%, which would bring his new salary to $16,300 per year. That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Hearing none, is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3410?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3410, reappointment of Ross Nigro as municipal judge.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3410. Any further discussion? I'll say that Judge Nigro has done an excellent job staying on top of everything that's transpired over the last 4 years within the legislature and Supreme Court, and he's a great guy. I wish I could vote. Anyway, there's nothing else. All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0. We now move on to the next item, which is public comments. If anyone would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and keep your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes or less. Mr. Holman?
I just wanted to say, if there's anybody here from the American government class, I did talk to Mr. Brown back during the parent-teacher conferences, and I've told him that we really like for people to come up and comment to us. So if you're in that class, you will get his attention if you come up and talk to us during this session. And I think going forward, he may make that a requirement for extra credit, just an FYI.
Okay. All right. Seeing no one moving forward to the podium, we'll move on to mayor and council communication. And tonight I will start with Ms. Abdelgawad. You never get to go first.
That's not a bad thing necessarily. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Ms. Lawrence for coming up and speaking to us tonight about all of the awesome things happening with the Arts Commission, telling us a little bit about the artwork that's in the council chambers and at Centerview. So thanks for taking your evening to come up here and talk to us about that. And just real quick, also congratulate our finance department on their most recent award. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Mr. Berenson.
No comments tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Abdelgawad, I agree with everything that she said. And I do want to I know we made some comments earlier in the meeting, but Mr. Crass, your department did a fantastic job, and I can't tell you enough. I know there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of meetings, a lot of coordinated effort, and like I told you, real simply, plan your work and work your plan. You guys did something, and this is something you don't do very often, but the expectation of the city is that you guys do it good and well, and you didn't let us down, so great job. Thank you.
Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. I couldn't help but notice that the trees lit up the slightly off color from what the building was. Makes a great display from the street as you come in tonight, so I really like the look of the building with the holiday lights. I thought that looked fantastic. And the only other thing I had is, it seems like I know by the time we get to you feel like you've run out of things to say because everybody's hit on it, and there are many things to be thankful for, but what that shows overall is that comprehensively as a city, looking from the 100,000-foot view, we are, to use a cliche, hitting on all cylinders right now. Absolutely. We really are. The city is in the best shape that it has ever been. We get kudos for our streets and our public works department, for our planning department, for Parks and Rec, for our communications, for administration, for finance, for the police department, you name it. And you all are doing a fantastic job, and I can't think of a better place to live and be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Serco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, yes, Harriet Lawrence, thank you for the Arts Commission, all you guys do, elementary schools and up. I mean, this is a good start. This gives them into the arts, and that's great. I got a couple granddaughters still in school, one in elementary, Raymore. So she loves doing all this. Again, the city, Mr. Crass, you guys again, doing a wonderful job. People will come to Raymore, and they say they want to come to Raymore because of what we have to offer, which is everything, which is roads, which is snow removal, which is during the summer, what you guys do is part of why they want to come here, along with our safety and our beautification and our parks. It's know that they'll have things done here that they need, and it's a great city to come to. So kudos to you and your staff for that. They do a great job even now. Sometimes you probably don't get to notice from people, but I heard from people too, and they were just blowing snow today, and we're blowing snow, and they're just happy the streets were done so quickly, and such a horrible storm that came through so quickly. We weren't supposed to get anything, and we got dumped pretty heavily. So again, that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to thank the staff for taking care of the snow. Even though I went out pretty late in the day to test a new snow blower, I really didn't have any fears that the city would be taking care of it, that they would get to my road eventually, because my road really is not going anywhere except to the main arterial. And it was nice that my fears were not even there. They say the easiest way to lose your job in an elected job in the municipal is the trash not being done correctly and the snow not being done correctly. And those are, I've tried to look that up to see who coined that phrase, but I can't find it. So I'm going to go ahead and keep saying it, and maybe it'll be attributed to me. Wanted to thank the staff. Hopefully you got a chance to enjoy your Thanksgiving before you had to get back at it. But I appreciate the fact that Jim's Recycling came and got some of the streets that they missed in the initial run through, and they came by and took care of the people that didn't get taken care of. And so some people missed their Thanksgiving or the day after Thanksgiving for that, and I appreciate that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very, very encouraged and thankful tonight for Harriet and what she reported on tonight about them trying to utilize our venues for performing arts. You know, after spending 9 days in New Orleans, I had my fill of performing arts on Bourbon Street, Royal Street, and every street east and west of that. And I totally enjoyed my time there, you know, in as much as that. And that's what I kind of hope for, you know, something like that brought here to home, that local or just regional people that want to show their talent or share their talent have a place to do it, you know. I don't see anything wrong with somebody rolling a piano down the street and just start playing it right there wherever they want, you know. I think that's beautiful. So thank you for that. It's just, you're going to allow it to happen and make it that way, and hopefully we can see that grow. So again, thank you. For staff, you've heard me say this over the years, and I just can't say it enough, but what I really wish that staff could go into the plant with me after a day like last night and hear the comments, you know. The one that really hit me the most, and always does, comes from a very young gentleman, to say the least. Very crass, very brash, no filter, and very vulgar. But his compliment just, you know, I would never expect that to come from him. I really wouldn't. And when he tells me that he drives through our city and he can tell where the city line is, not by the sign, but by the pavement, it really says a lot. And he did say thank you for that. So that just speaks volume to me, you know, and for somebody that I wouldn't give too much credit for other than his opinion on the streets, you know. So anyway, thanks again to all the staff. Thanks to management, Jim and your staff, for thinking of the people that kind of fell through some loopholes and unintended consequences. I agree with Mr. Burke that, you know, the way we treat our employees is a very big gauge on what says about our organization. And quite frankly, if we didn't do that, I believe that could just, you know, be one of those things that would be a detriment to our organization. So thank you for the foresight and the care of that particular employee, and not just them, but whoever else may fall through the same crack. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And you're right, Mr. Holman, it's hard for me to add to what's been said already, so I'll move on to a couple of new areas here. Mayor's Christmas tree lighting is this Friday, just as a reminder. And we also received an email this last week on the Adopt a Family that the city is doing. I would ask that we all participate in that. I know that the family is fairly sizable that we've adopted this year for our gift giving, and I hope everybody has an opportunity to participate in that. How many kids? 5? Yep. So anyway, and I know we have a reason to move into executive session, so I'll cut my report short and ask for that motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into executive session to discuss litigation matters in accord with Missouri Revised Statutes 610.021, subsection 1.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to go into executive session. Could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Circo?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kellogg?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend absent.
Okay, so we will now move into executive session, and upon adjournment of that, we will come back out into open session and adjourn from the open session. So thank you.